Greetings, everybody, for the week of Memorial Day. Last video I made was before that, and so this will be Saturday Fireside, and I hope you all had a great time, as best as obviously you could, with the conditions that are going on Memorial Day with your families, off from work, from whatever you were doing. And let's remember as well, in the spirit of the day, that the very existence of this regime, if you will, I don't consider it legitimate, this government that was not allowed to have been formed. It's illegal. It exists because people who were not qualified, who were not legally allowed on the ballot, were put there. The very existence of this lawlessness is an insult to all of our fallen soldiers, and that is something that we should all remember. It is an insult to our fallen soldiers. And in the spirit of insulting our fallen soldiers, which he's done in a million ways, with his words and with his actions, he made a giant screed, just like he did for Easter. Happy Easter to everybody. That was a solemn day too. Easter's a solemn day. Happy Memorial Day to everybody. What a solemn day. But I'm sure he does not know how to even speak on a day like either of those two. Happy Memorial Day. Especially to all of the thugs and blah 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 and blah 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 and blah blah blah, leading his supporters on. Oh, we're gonna make it so much better now. We're gonna have a safe border, and it will be safe and great again soon. We have made great progress. No way. If I was president, for instance, I would never, and honestly, I think that I take that role more seriously than he does. Even just in the way that I'm acting now, I would be a better president. Just for those kinds of performative things, that is the president's job. I would never make something like that about me and my progress and my political goals. I would go out of my way to be humble on a day like that. But he's incapable of that. Anyway, if you're just checking in now, one thing to remember about the supposed one big beautiful bill is that just passed a couple of weeks ago, is that there was a vacant Democratic seat. Somebody had died earlier on in the week, and that was the reason why it wasn't a 50-50 tie, why the bill didn't fail. And so the Senate will be making changes to this bill, and then it will have to go to a conference committee, but ultimately it will have to go back to the House eventually. And if that can happen after an election of some kind or another, then we can perhaps stall enough that they're not able to pass it until they're not able to pass the amended version of the bill until we already have our Democratic senator in there. And if everybody votes the same way that they voted before, which is a tall order, then we could potentially block this permanently. every stage of this process is a place where pressure can be enacted. And that is something that we all have to remember about this bill. This bill is a disaster for the deficit. In general, I want Trump's policies to be successful at harming people, because I don't think that we have the luxury as a country of trusting Donald Trump. So in general, I want them to be successful at harming people, but this bill is an exception. This bill targets health care, which is something that the lack of health care is one of the main reasons, as I've talked about before in my paper and other places. The public health situation in this country is one of the main reasons why Trump won. I think Timothy Snyder wrote an article about this and said that it would have been impossible for Trump to win without the public health crisis that we're living through with opioids and other kinds of addiction. That without that, and without the large-scale childhood trauma that it creates, without these cycles, it would have been virtually impossible for Trump to win. And yet, they're cutting the health care for millions of people that would help them get out of this. And that is not something that is ever going to help us. Not on balance. It's just not worth it. It is going to hurt us. It is going to hurt us electorally, at least in the long term. And there isn't really a long-term period. We're either going to fix this or we're going to perish. We're kind of at the moment, the moment of truth. In a couple more years, next election cycle, that will really be the last chance that we get. But insofar as there is a long term, this will hurt us. This will mean that more people will be willing to vote for, I won't necessarily say Republicans, for radical, dangerous candidates of any stripe. And they happen to be Republicans right now. More people will be willing to vote for them to vote for people that are dangerous like Trump if they don't have health care. They're not going to remember who took their health care away. They're going to remember that they or somebody that they know is addicted to something and can't get off of it. And there's no resources available for them. That is what they're going to see. They're not going to see the fact that it happened because of Republican policies. So, and then there's another thing, and there's multiple more things about this bill. One, it blocks, I've talked about them before, but it blocks the ability of courts to enforce contempt citations, which is the last thing in the damn world that we need right now. In normal times, it would be, it never happens. But right now, it's the last thing that we need. And then the other thing is that they ban any kind of regulation of AI. And so the only regulation of AI that we're going to be getting is going to be from a recession that could take place, that would deprive the startups of funding. If a regulation at the state and federal level is banned, that's the only thing that's going to keep it in check. And I'll get to that in a moment. But I've talked about the dangers of AI in terms of things like sex bots and stuff like that, which are, there has never, and I'm going to say it again, there has never been something that is so addictive and that is so energy and natural resource intensive at the same time as AI sex bots. And I can only hope that they get deprived of the funding that they need to get off the ground. But if they don't, then we will need potentially, if Congress can pass laws, we will need to regulate them. And I could see that as being something that could pass in a couple of years after a potential general strike, after Trump is out of office and some other Republican is in office. I could see that being a bipartisan bill that gets passed in Congress to regulate that. But we can't cut off our ability to regulate that stuff. I mean, I suppose that it's not like they're amending the Constitution, so Congress could still do it. But Congress can't really bind itself other than by amending the Constitution. But it's still that they can bind the state governments because it's a supreme law of the land, is the Constitution followed by federal laws. And so this is in every one of the ways that I talk about that something like the tariffs is good news, even though it hurts. And that's why it's scary to see them go away. This is bad news in every one of those ways, and we just have to fight it. But there are plenty of opportunities that we will have to do so, and we should start now, obviously. This couple of weeks is a very productive time, but we should keep on doing it. When it goes back to the House, we should put pressure on it. We should vote in our next special elections that we're going to have. God bless all of you out there that are doing that, and I hope that we can be successful. So, next thing, Trump always chickens out. Yeah, he does. He does always chicken out on his tariffs. And that's actually something that I don't like. I want him to go through with them. I want him to be stupid. Maybe eventually he will. And it doesn't matter because a court just ruled that they're illegal. And I don't think that he's going to disobey a court when they gave him an excuse for why he would chicken out. But he wants to chicken out anyway. It's not something that I actually like because I want the economy to crash for all the reasons that I just described. It will rally our communities together. It will help stop the reckless use of AI. And I'm not somebody that's opposed to it necessarily. There are great uses of machine learning, but the reckless use of AI in ways that endanger public health and energy efficiency, which all AI right now is incredibly energy inefficient, and it will be for several years. I really want the economy to crash. And I would suffer under it as everybody would. But I want it to happen. And I think that we could gain a lot from that. But we might not get that. Or we might get it in a different way. Or he might destroy a lot of small businesses, but the larger ones might still prosper. I don't like this waffling. I want it to be clean and easy and simple, and help bring this to an end as quickly as we can. Help us build towards the general strike. And so lazy weeks like this are not actually something that I have very mixed feelings about weeks like this, where not very much happened. And it's sure better than something where he shows how powerful he was and he scares the crap out of all of us and gets us, potentially demoralizes us. That would certainly be worse. But weeks like this are very dangerous. They deprive us of the pain that we're going to need in order to help us to get out of this situation, and in order to help us have a future when this is over. And in many ways, when it comes to energy use, the only reason why emissions are going to fall this year is because, at least in the United States, is because of a recession. It's not going to be because of solar and wind like it was the past couple of years. And we're not going to have a reduction in our percentage of fossil fuel use. We're just going to, the whole pie is going to shrink, if it does. And if it doesn't, then that is very shockingly dangerous, and we have to suffer the consequences of what we voted for, rather than having a chance for mercy and to not get what we deserve. And fuck that. Pardon my French. Fuck that. In the most Christian way possible. That's exactly what Christianity is about. Is about scoffing and scorning at the idea that we should get what we deserve because it's our birthright that we don't. Anyway, rant over. So, there are some great things that I am going to go back to that one more time. One good thing that did come out of Trump always chickens out, the fact that it's an acronym and that people are saying it, is that it does throw him off balance. And it's incredibly easy to do. The Lincoln Project was always great at it. But now Wall Street, bunch of stodgy Wall Street traders that don't care about anything except making money. Now Wall Street is doing the very thing that the Lincoln Project was always so good at. It's a common term there at this point. TACO, the acronym. Trump always chickens out. That is a very powerful thing in terms of getting him to be off balance, which is good. It makes him less capable of implementing his plans. It helps his dementia to accelerate at this point, which also makes him less capable. So it's very good that he's receiving this criticism. Somebody actually said it to him, a journalist. I feel very bad for them, but I love them. They did a great job. Talk to him about this. In a normal time, journalists, it's unprofessional for a journalist to use these kinds of terms and not treat the office of the presidency with decorum, but this guy doesn't have any decorum, and so we're just applying his standard to himself. And he ripped into them in a way that was not really like he ripped into people in the past. He would be much more vocal and much more on point in attacking people and spewing lies about them when they would do that. He was very meek, relatively speaking. He was trying not to be meek, but he was very meek, and he clearly seems like he has something in his voice, and people that have not talked about his cognitive decline much have weighed in and said that he sounds like he has cognitive decline. And I've been talking about this for the longest time. I knew that there was a difference in Trump a year ago, more than a year ago, 14 months now. But it's becoming more and more obvious. And sometimes I wish that he was this cognitively declining, this demented, when the election happened. Maybe he would have lost. Or maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe we just really didn't want to live as a country, collectively. But, anyway, so I'm done with that now. So, now for some some lesser known things. So Joe Biden, there's this great video that this guy made called "Joe Biden Didn't Fail America, America Failed America," and it's posted below in the description. But it is the thesis of that is basically that every single American institution failed, and that was the reason why we got to where we did. And he said a lot of the same things that I said about Joe Biden in my previous videos about Biden. That he had a theory of the American people that was wrong. He thought that the American people were the ones that he had grown up with, rather than the ones that we have now. He was very naive in that way, but he basically described that the Republican Party, and the court system, the criminal justice system, all of these institutions, and at the very beginning it also states that obviously we should be blaming Trump himself as well. He's an ass, and that's something that you should. So this is definitely. I don't recommend this guy a lot because he does post a lot of doomer stuff, but he is correct and he's sober in what he says in this video, that each institution failed, that Joe Biden likely didn't even know how bad the polling was because of how tight his circle was. And that Joe Biden was just the last string in the chain, that Americans didn't produce a candidate, either Republicans or Democrats or anybody, did not produce a candidate that the electorate felt was worth living for. And that's a part that I add in more. But it's a great video and you should listen to it, and I largely agree with this video. And finally, Curtis Yarvin. So this has overall been a pretty pessimistic thing that I've been writing, and frankly, it is. This video is relatively pessimistic, in terms of the fact that the more weeks there are like this, the these weeks don't make us any stronger. But Curtis Yarvin is attacking DOGE. This is something that's very funny. A lot of people, they were like, oh, and Curtis Yarvin is this horrible guy, this awful influence on all of these tech billionaire people that has said various genocidal statements about the poor and working people of the world, and how he wants to replace them with AI, and how he wants to grind them up into biofuel or whatever. Curtis Yarvin has said all sorts of bizarre, dehumanizing stuff like that. And frankly, I wish that Trump would just get on with that, because then we'd have a general strike within a week or two. But it's so impractical. But Curtis Yarvin is attacking DOGE. He was one of the main inspirations for it. And he has said that it's like, quote, an orchestra of chimpanzees trying to play Beethoven. It wasn't Beethoven, it was Wagner. That was the symphony he used. I'm definitely showing my lack of sleep here. But everybody in these, I went on Fed News. The Fed News, I'll try to post it in the description. I was going on the Fed News r/Fed News subreddit, and I saw tons of people all that were all just convinced that these people were unstoppable geniuses, and they were so in such a doomer mindset, and they had this post. There was this post that said, "Oh yeah, I guess what we're headed for. We're headed for biofuel." I asked what it was they were talking about, and they talk about Curtis Yarvin, and I was like, I said to them, I hope he does that. He tries to do that, because then his supporters will turn on him. I hope he tries to turn his own supporters and do something like that. But because they will stop him at that point. But these people were just inconsolable. Well, Curtis Yarvin is now bitching and whining about how incompetent DOGE is. And I talked about this before with Project 2025 as well. Project 2025 and Trump. They were just bitching to no end about his tariffs and how incompetent he was. And I love that. I love that because it's proof that whatever is going on now, and I can't say that we're the ones that are doing it. It is definitely a power greater than ourselves. Whatever is going on now, it's working. So far, at least. And I already mentioned in a previous video that over half the electorate already believes that Trump is a dictator, and that's accurate. And I'm glad that polling like that is possible in this country, but I'm enormously glad that the American people are seeing much more clearly than I could have ever imagined. And so it's working. And every time that we see this incompetence get criticized by the people who wrote these plans and had these proposals, and frankly, they're just look in the mirror, frankly, because to any of these people, Curtis or the Project 2025 mooks or anybody, just look at this. You're just looking in the mirror. You were the ones that were incompetent. This whole coup could have been done in 7 days, and you could have had no protests, and you could have had instant dictatorship in the winter of this year. And you were stupid. And I'm happy about that. But yeah, that's a light-hearted way, I suppose, to end this video. God bless you all. I might be seeing you today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, with my principles video. I'm definitely not going to be done with chapter 5 of my paper this week, although I have been getting to work on it again. But God bless you all, and I hope that you do well and that you succeed against this regime in spite of it. God bless you. Take care.